So Stallion, as we go through this, I want to make sure that we help people understand that there are multiple things here. So if we were to break down this golden filter for people, it's going to come down into three components. What are those three components?
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or investment advice. Please consult a professional advisor before making decisions based on what you hear on this show.
Welcome into the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. If this is the first time you're joining us, I'm glad to have you. I am Russ Morgan. I'm one of your hosts today alongside my partner, Mr. Joey Murray. Stallion, good afternoon.
Always good to be here, man.
Hey, man, I want to talk about why today's topic is so important because we're about to go into the fourth quarter of 2025. I know that we've seen expenses as a whole rising, and this is impacting everyone. And as we kind of come to a conclusion, what we're going to do now is going to make the decision of how our financial story for 2025 is set up. But the problem is, I think most investors out there are chasing shiny objects. They're hoping for outcomes instead of filtering them. And that's why today we want to pull back what we would say the curtain on what we would call the golden filter, how to adjust and apply investing through a filter for fit, for risk, for outcome. It's the same process that you and I have been able to use up to this point that's built over $50,000 a month.
Yeah, there's no doubt. A couple quick thoughts on what you just said. Number one, you're right. Most investors start with the wrong end in mind. They say, well, everybody's doing this. There's a big trend towards this crypto coin, so maybe I need to jump on it because the ROI is just insane, the potential ROI. So they start with what do I invest in, not who am I and what is the investment actually do for me to get to my outcome, which I'm glad we're going to break this down today. But the second thing is, man, I don't think, and maybe as you're listening to this, you can agree or disagree. I don't think passive income is any longer a nice to have. I think it's a must have. I mean, think about this. Look over the last 5 years. What are your monthly expenses, your lifestyle expenses? What percentage have they risen by just in the last 5 years? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? I mean, Russ, I'm just telling you, we support several different missions, organizations, and things. And one of them sent me a report this week that shows that their expenses since 2022 have risen almost 80%.
Wow.
Now, I know some of those are probably voluntary ideas that they've chosen to do, but good night, how many of those things were inflationary expenses? Like, that's why the importance of what we're talking about today is we got to dive into this filter.
How many summers do you have left with your kids? 10, maybe less?
And are you spending them together, or are you still stuck in the office while time slips by?
You want freedom. That's not the problem. The problem is you don't have a system that buys back your time. Without it, 3 years from now, your kids will be older and they won't care that your business was more successful. They'll remember you weren't there.
That's why we built the Passive Income Operating System, the plan we use to create over $50,000 a month in passive income. The system isn't free, but the training that shows you how it works is, and it's under an hour.
Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/PIOS. Take the first step to buying back your time now. I think if you have a filter, then the goal would be, right, is that you could go from this randomized risk of trying to make good decisions, but without any level of understanding or clarity, to a calculated confidence, right? I mean, isn't that really what we want? People are saying, where do I invest? What do I invest in? When do I invest? How do I avoid losing money? These are all the pain points that constantly are coming up. And it's seemingly to them that it's random, that in which they're making decisions because they don't have a filter.
Well, Russ, hold on. Before you jump in, I know what you're saying is true because the people who have graduated from our passive income lab, this is the only thing that they talk about. You know, they could talk about all sorts of different aspects of the lab, like all the different things that they're learning. But what comes through in their testimonial videos is, I am now confident. Like, that is the difference maker that made everything, the 12 weeks of learning, the cost, the time, the effort, that is what made it worth it to them.
Well, I want to break down for the person listening, like, we built $50,000 a month in passive income. We've been stacking it on top of each other for a while now. And for us, initially, it was a little bit randomized, right? Like we were still learning. And I think that that's the blessing. Somebody asked me, recently is like, hey, we were on the way back from the lake. And he said, man, you're invested in a lot of different things. I'm just trying to understand which one of those things should I be leaning into? And are those things that you would still do again if you had the opportunity to go back? And I was like, here's the gift, right? Like we get to give to people who want to learn. This is education for us. This is fun. We're going to talk a little bit in a second about investor DNA. I like exciting things. Joey likes to, please me. And so he will, he allows us to invest in some of these crazy ideas. But for you, right, like we want to give back to you. Like an education is being able to see multiple different options. If we just showed you one thing, like land investing, which is on the top of our list, right? It's producing, $23,000 a month, almost $24,000 a month net. You would say, why are you guys just not doing more and more of that? Well, because it'd be boring. It wouldn't be much of a podcast for that, right? There is a podcast. It's called The Art of Passive Income. Mark Podolsky and his team break down land investing, right? We wanted to have multiple different ways to do it because we also know that we're all unique and the way that we see the world will help and determine the way that we invest. So Stallion, as we go through this, I want to make sure that we help people understand that there are multiple things here. So if we were to break down this golden filter for people, it's going to come down into three components. What are those three components people need to know?
Right. We're going to talk about the fit of the investment, the risk associated with it, and then the outcome of that investment. Those are the three major buckets.
So fit is like who you are versus what you buy, right?
Right.
Risk is going to be where it could all go wrong. And the outcome is why it all matters. So let's jump into fit here. So top element for the person listening, I'm going to try my best for those who are watching to draw some of these things. Joey, what's the benefit for somebody who's trying to invest? What's the fit? What do they need to understand?
Well, I think the first one that we always talk about is knowing your investor DNA, right? What is your profile that God has given you certain strengths, certain weaknesses, certain ways that you see the world that not everybody else has. Okay. For instance, we based our investor DNA profile. And by the way, if you don't have this profile, you can get access to it, right? You can come join our community, wealth.wallstreet.com/community, and you can actually buy the course directly in there, or you can jump on a call with one of our coaches and they can walk you through exactly how to get access, wealth.wallstreet.com/free call. But when you start with that profile, it tells you based on your strengths, your weaknesses, and it helps you to filter now all the different passive income streams. I think there's 16 on our matrix on the pros and the cons of how you will personally see that investment. That is the number one stop when we start talking about fit in my book. What would you add to that, Russ?
Well, I want to talk, you say preference and the way that it, way that you see the world, we've all been created. And since we're probably 5 or 6 years old, we have a way that we filter the things that we see and the way that we like them, right? If you're watching, you notice on the screen, I'm showing you the very first investment that I made outside of Wall Street. And it's this beautiful tongue-in-cheek apartment complex, right? Now you're like, man, you made the decision to buy a whole apartment complex on your first investment? The answer is no. There's actually this little guy sitting over here on the screen that's walking literally into the unit that I own. I own one small unit within inside of this, 50 unit apartment complex. And Joey, not shocking, I didn't like it. Well, there's a couple of reasons why I didn't like it. One of the reasons I didn't like it is that it was not close to me, right? It was over 2 hours away from where I am. I didn't have the ability to influence the outcome. So if you are following, we have ever taken like a DISC assessment or anything like that in our side of our investor DNA, we do a personality assessment. And I'm an influencer. I do not like boring items. I need something that I can be a part of, something that's exciting. A long-term rental property was not exciting for me. It was actually the opposite. It was super boring. And it didn't matter if I was getting the $78 a month or not, right? Which, by the way, shortly after I acquired the unit above that decided to, flood out my unit. And I then paid for that for the next, 18 months or whatever with my 78 bucks. So, but it was really not necessarily just the cash flow or the lack of cash flow. It was that I couldn't influence. That was a big differentiator. What other items go into fit other than just investor DNA style?
Well, I think the next one would be, what sort of asset class do you prefer? And what I mean by that is, are you really more like interested in things that have collateral behind them, like real estate? Are you thinking you'd actually be more inclined towards an online or technology backed type of asset class, like content websites or e-commerce or things of that nature? There's all sorts of other preferences when it comes to assets that you need to be thinking about. Man, which ones of these do I actually align better with, and which ones do I want to kind of stay away from? The third thing I would consider is like, are you accredited or not accredited? And what I mean by that is, the IRS has given you accreditation status based on your income and your net worth. So if you're over $1 million in net worth outside of your home, or have earned over $200,000 each of the last several years and in continuing to sustain that as a single person, or $300,000 a year as a married couple, then you are considered accredited. Well, there's only certain types of investments that would fit you if you're not accredited. And so immediately, if you know it's for accredited only, you can go ahead and mark that off of the fit list as it pertains to this component we're talking about.
Well, and by the way, as we're sitting here, just as a reminder, we're talking about this filter. You're building this filter. The importance of creating this filter prior to investing, Stallion, is that you don't go out and make emotional decisions. You always are working from a very objective point of view. That prevents you from making bad emotional decisions or chasing shiny objects, right?
Right, 100%. So the other part about accredited versus non-accredited is you have a minimum and a maximum investment number. Like if you already know, man, I've got 50,000 to invest, and the investment requires 100,000, you immediately know that that's off your list.
Or just the opposite. Like, hey, I want to put, a couple $100,000 away, but the deal I'm doing only allows me to put in 25K, right? Like I'm doing a private loan and the person only needs 25,000. Well, do I really want to do 8 of these?
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. It goes both ways. And then I think the last thing is, you think about when you're investing, there's typically a general partner and a limited partner in most everything, syndications in particular. And the big question about that is, the difference between the two is action or influence, right? How much am I going to be involved in the outcome of this business plan, of this investment? A general partner is going to be active. They're going to be in the almost day-to-day grind of making sure that the business plan is held to. Whereas the limited partner is just typically capital, and they're going to give of that only and not their time. So it's kind of a seesaw, if you will. You got to figure out which side of that you want to be on or can be on. And then I think that leads to the last thing, is how are profits distributed? Okay, so in particular, if you're a limited partner where it's only capital that you're involved in the deal, you have to then decide, how much do I think the profit of this deal is worth to me as the capital person? And I'll just give you an example. We had one deal we were looking at one point where the operator was wanting 50 or 60% of the profit at the end of the deal, and we were 100% of the capital. And we said, we think it's more like you should be 30%, we should be 70%. And thus we did not move forward with the deal. We couldn't come to grips on how valuable our capital was to the deal. And so therefore it wasn't a fit for us.
How much passive income do you have right now? And if in 5 years you're still at the same point, what's that going to cost you? Maybe more time at a job you hate, or missing moments with your family?
See, most people don't move because they don't know what to do. So they just keep doing the exact same thing.
That's why we built the Passive Income Lab. It's a 12-week program where you are guaranteed your first $500 a month in passive income.
But here's the catch. It's not open to everyone. We only let in 10 people at a time.
So the real question is, will you be one of them? Apply now at choosepassiveincome.com.
There was nothing worse than walking into class when you're in school and the teacher saying, "Pop quiz day." Why? Because you were unprepared. Are you unprepared, though, for financial freedom?
Don't be. Find out how close you are by taking our 30-second quiz at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/quiz.
So when you think about fits now and you look at all the different investments, we're showing like 19 different investments, which, we've added and taken off from this list constantly, but this is the active ones that exist out there. And you think about fit, out of all of those items that you just listed, which one resonates the most with you as to why you leaned into one of these versus another?
I think I always go to the land business, and I would say based on the fit criteria, it met me as investor DNA from the standpoint of the risk associated with, which we're going to get into risk specifically, but having the collateral be something that's very boring and stable, for me, I love, right? And it's more of a lending play where I can put that money to work at higher than I could on a private loan. So at my personality type, my investor DNA loves private lending, but whenever I can get private lending along with equity upsides like we do in the land business, that to me is a huge win that's where I lean more towards that than anything else. What would you say?
Well, for me, it was definitely the short-term rental business. And now the current model where we're actually getting paid on this we're not even running a short-term rental business anymore. We just owner financed it. But for me, this was a huge thing because it allowed us to be involved. It allowed us to take a long-term rental, turn it into a short-term rental, and then promote it. And still promoting it. This scratches my itch, man. Like, this is the thing that I really enjoy. So if you're coming to Birmingham, please support that business. Wake Up. It used to be called Wake Up in Birmingham, but it's called Wake Up Stays now. Is that correct, Joey?
That's right. Yeah, Wake Up Stays.
All right. Well, one of the things I think is important is that, finding that fit for you. So what are those items? All right. So let's move to risk and talk a little bit about risk, Diane. So what's at the top of this item that people need to consider?
I would lead off with, and I never used to think about this, but geography. How close are you to the actual investment itself from the asset class or the operation of the business or whatever it may be? How close are you to? Some people want to be within driving distance of that asset class or that operation because they want to have more kind of controls or more hands-on. Some people, like if you're in the middle of Hawaii, that's going to limit you significantly on what you can invest in if you want to be super close. So you have to kind of make that choice. And I think that actually also plays into certain things like, are there certain areas of the country that are more prone to certain disasters or natural disasters and things? You have to factor those things in, right?
Well, I think, another one as you're building this filter is you should always understand who the operator is of the investment that you're making. What is their level of experience and what is their level of experience in that specific class? Like recently we had somebody was telling us, hey, they had 20 years of experience in a very specific asset class, but yet they had recently over the last, say, 12 to 24 months pivoted to another one and was really excited about it, thought it had lots of upside. Didn't mean that they weren't right, didn't mean that they couldn't have success, but also didn't mean that they had experience in that one area, not
Right.
enough for us. And so for us, as we were looking at our investor buy box, our filter, we were saying, we need to have more experts in this. I want someone who's already done this a lot before. Another one that most people need to have in their filter is what is the collateral assigned to this? Like how much of this am I investing in? If everything went bad, can I get access to, right? Is there going to be something that I can sell or is it all information, right? When you're talking about like, a digital website, for instance, it's information. That's one of those areas that we've chosen to do. Sometimes we have it, but if you're investing, you need to understand what is the collateral that backs that. And Stallion, like when you said a second ago, for you, out of the risk assessment, what fit best? Well, for me, it definitely was the land business because of that, because of the collateral. The collateral was the go-to for me because when I got to hear Mark Podolsky's story about how when the market crashed in '08, he didn't immediately see a decline in his income. He said it took about 2 years, like 2010, 2011 is where he experienced 50% defaults in his investment notes from selling those those parcels. Well, he still had the asset though. So while his income was down 50%, it's not like it was gone, like some people had with other items, like their stocks or whatever. No, gone. Paper assets. No, he actually owned a physical asset. So the asset, then he just had to go back and resell it. It took him a while to go back and resell it. But once he did, his income went straight back up and actually even increased because now his bases in those properties he bought were much lower.
Yeah, good point. Another risk factor, Russ, I think we should talk about is just kind of what you mentioned is market forces, right? What are the potential, trends in the market and how are they going to affect this asset class? Now, you probably don't know exactly where the puck is headed in all things, but you definitely should be considering what are the potential hurdles or risks associated with the market for this particular asset class. I'll give you the example of the online content businesses. A lot of the current kind of AI driven models are hurting these content websites because people are skipping the Googles of the world. They're skipping the Bings and the things like this. And so they're going to AI, which may or may not drive them back to that content website. Google changes their algorithm on a regular basis. That's been a major factor in how these things are valued in the marketplace. And so I think that's important to consider.
Well, I also would say that we should, consider the government, right? The government is going to determine the success or sometimes the failures of these businesses just by the way that they're either pro what's happening, right? Like we think about in the Biden administration, very clean energy focused. So if you're investing in wind and solar, I just went through Oklahoma, rode through these mountains. There was hundreds of these windmills. Well, those tax incentives that they were getting are gone, no more. And I was talking to one of the guys that lives there in that area. He said, "Yeah, I've had friends that are in this business. Now those businesses are laying everyone off because all the incentives to buy and to put up these windmills are no longer. They were not a productive means of actually energy production, but yet there was a proponent from the government who, like this demand of like trying to create that will markets, that push that market. So when we look at things, we should consider, is the government positive this and maybe can we get in the flow? Or like in the short-term rental space that we were talking about earlier, are they wanting to create restrictions in this area? Is there is there going to be a reason why maybe they're not going to be before it? I know in the real estate space, people are talking about, opportunity zones. Well, you just need to understand what the government's involvement is. So this should be a part of your filter so that as you start to make alignment into different investments, you've already thought through that in advance.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, Russ, into the last bucket here. Instead of just the fit and the risk, we have to think about the outcome.
Well, before you do that, though, Joey, like there are a couple things that I want to point out for the person listening. There's question marks that they need to understand is like, what are the black swan events that could possibly happen where I could either lose all my money or maybe not lose all my money, but not make anything, right? Like we had an operator who had not considered a black swan event. And as a result, we're basically going to break even. And as we realize that the cost of money is not free, we're going to lose money, right? We may get back what we invested, but after the time value of money, what it costs for the cost of capital, people don't consider what are those black swan events. If you don't have those listed, then you could be in a situation. Another one is the question is that when you get a deal that comes to you, you need to understand why are they coming to you with this deal? If you're getting, for instance, a tech deal and you're not in the tech space, like, is this something? Joey, I invested in a healthcare option. Well, that was one of those areas I was like, I thought maybe because I had a family in the healthcare, dentist, a doctor, a vet, maybe that was the reason why people are investing or coming to me for that investment, but they didn't know that. And now I look back on that investment 8 years later and I realize I shouldn't have been investing in that thing. So if you're getting presented or pitched something and you're like, I don't really understand why I'm the one they're coming to. What's the question they should, or what should the thought they should be considering, Joey?
Who passed on this deal already? Like, where's the smart money that's already passed? And now I'm considered the dumb money. In fact, I think somebody recently told us, they're like, if you're sitting at the table and you don't know who the dummy is, it's usually you.
Yeah, when you're playing cards, you don't know who the sucker is.
Yeah.
That's who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. But I think that there's if you at least are asking that question, you can get to the bottom of it. So I think it's super, super helpful.
All right, the third piece. So we've talked about fit, we've talked about risk within your filter. Let's talk about outcome. Joey, in
Yeah.
outcome, we're leaning into the fourth quarter. What are most people talking about right now? What's at the top of their filter, if there is a filter, that they're wanting to think about, and it must be a part of their investment?
Well, a lot of them have just recently finished their business tax returns from the year prior, and they're like, ooh, I got a tax problem. What are the tax benefits of this investment first? How can I invest for that purpose solely? And guess what? That doesn't work out so well. In fact, a lot of times that you've heard the term, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. This is what people are doing. And I don't know, if you recently talked to somebody, Russ, that had something to say about this particular subject.
Well, he said if someone is coming to you at this time of year and the first thing they're leading with is the tax benefits of the investments, run.
Mm.
Not that it's not a potentially a good deal, but unfortunately, this time of year, as we enter the fourth quarter, people are really focused and on tax benefits and potentially some of the shadier investment groups out there. They know that. And so they lead with that element and it appeals to our emotional side and we make poor financial decisions as a result. So I would say when you should align your filter up with, does it have tax benefits? Great. Are those tax benefits today beneficial to me? Because sometimes you need ordinary, sometimes you need passive. We need to be able to balance those, but make sure, as Joey said, that the other elements line up first. So I put this here because it's a setup, because I think we make the mistake of trying to do it too quickly. All right.
Yeah.
What other outcome items go into the filter, Joey?
Well, this is one of my favorites is cash flow. How quickly does cash flow actually happen on this deal? How likely is the cash flow to come? Because here's the thing, you look at the wrong PPM deck or the PowerPoint or pitch deck, and they say, oh yeah, we have an 8% pref or a 10% pref or whatever the number is. And you start looking at the business plan, but it's a deal that's going to take years to either build from the ground up or years before they can create enough value into the project to where the cash flow will exceed their expenses. This is not a cash flow deal, although they're making cash flow comments. Does that make sense? Like, you have to be clear on when is it likely that this is going to start cash flowing. And if you're trying to get the passive income exceeding monthly expenses, this is probably one of the gold standards in anything that you're trying to invest in.
Another outcome-based item that probably goes into your filter is what's the growth or the potential. Some of you are going to want to have multiples. Like, hey, I want to invest. Yes, I want some cash flow, but I'm also more interested in not just getting my principal back, but getting multiples on my principal. So what is the growth element? If that's important to you, right? Write it down. Everybody's going to be like, well, Russ, why wouldn't it ever be important to me? Well, because it is a teeter-totter, right? Like cash flows on one end, growth's on the other, and the last one is time. All of those will play into it, right? Like I want the benefits of all of these, but you don't get all of them, right? Now, there's some bad deals that somebody will tell you get on, but those are false statements. So you have to determine which one is going to be your driver, which one is going to be the most important thing for you, and know that going into every deal. And it doesn't mean it can't change in the future, but
Right.
if you start with this as your filter for all the investment decisions you're making at that time, it'll help you avoid getting like, 'cause what we keep coming back to, shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, just to put some more detail on the time aspect, Russ, sometimes I don't think we consider the fact that sometimes you want to be in a deal for a short period of time. I only want my money at work for the next year because I have something else that I need to do with it after the fact. But in other cases, you may not want to be always on search of another deal. And the business plan is only a 3-year plan. So what am I going to do when that money comes back to me? You may want to invest in something that is more perpetual, like, hey, we're going to hold this asset for the next 30 years. That's our goal with this business plan, so that you don't have to keep looking for places for that money to be at work. So that's just the two sides of that coin that I would say as you consider time. You need to make sure that those things are being communicated in before you invest.
And a lot of the investments that I would say, that we've made earlier this year, especially the ones in the syndication space, we were trying to think about, hey, what are some of the, balances between growth, investment, and then time horizon, right? Like we want to get a little exposure in these different elements. We need a little passive income to help grow our report. We also are looking for a little multiple on the principal, and a few of them offered some tax benefits. It wasn't the leading indicator, but it definitely helped move the needle past where we would have said no to it. All right, Stallion, for people who are like, okay, I got this filter, now what, right? Like we say that financial freedom occurs when your passive income exceeds monthly expenses, but people say, but how do I actually get there?
Well, number one, there's steps to getting there, and you don't skip steps. Like getting to financial freedom requires that you follow a process. And the first one is having the system. In fact, Russ, I would tell you that more people know the actual knowledge that we're talking about today. They know that, oh man, if I do this and I create passive income exceeds my monthly expenses, I'll be free. But very few people are free because they don't have a system. You've said it before, that you have to have a baseline system, because that's what you fall back on whenever performance is lacking.
Yeah, you don't
And
rise to the level of your goals, you fall to your level of your systems.
yeah, exactly. If you haven't already got your system in place, the passive income operating system, go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/PIOS, watch the webinar, get the details, and take action. That's step one. If you already have the system in place, now you need your investor engine. That's what we've been talking about today, is taking and leveling up as an investor. And step one of that is your investor DNA. Step two is this building the buy box. And all of that can be done by enrolling in our passive income lab. This is the 1-2 punch. The system and the lab will get you all of the things that you need to be successful as a passive investor to get to financial freedom. So if you go to choosepassiveincome.com, you can actually take a small survey, small quiz to find out where you stand, and then to apply to see if you could be a part of what we're talking about.
All right. So, Tribe, do you have this golden filter in place? Have you been able to build it out? Some people say, well, I've had pieces, but I didn't have all of it. So we wanted to break this down for you to help you understand what are all these little pieces that can go under fit. How do I need to understand the risk? What is going to be the outcome that I'm most likely wanting to achieve? If you start with that in mind, then you can then decide, as every opportunity that comes your way, as you're telling people you're an investor, you can put it through this filter. And when it doesn't match up, you can be confident, right, that you're not going to chase it out of fear of missing out, but be confident that you're making the right decisions to get the results for you. Remember, this is for you. It doesn't matter if another deal would be good for your friend. Is it good for you? Stallion, thank you so much for adding so much value today. Thank you for listening. If you gain value, take time, screenshot this, and just repost it wherever you are, just so we know that you want us to create more content just like this. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.